Welcome to Andy's Storytime, a place where you can put down the screen and pick up a book for a guided read along. Follow along with the words in your book, and be sure to turn the page when you hear this sound. Today we're reading Dangerous Dan, written and illustrated by Jeff Malik. Dangerous Dan, adventure man, was bright and bold and brave. Whatever a kid could do, he did, except perhaps behave. Dangerous Dan took off as planned for school one windy day, until a gust came up and thrust his lunch and books away. As papers flew, and food did too, Dan clutched his notebook tight. The cover things spread out like wings, and Dan was in flight. The notebook soared with Dan aboard, above the treetops' reaches. He gave a flock of birds a shock, and giggled at their screeches. He terrorized the friendly skies. He buzzed a jumbo jet. The captain freaked while people shrieked and squealed and got upset. He glided where the country air hung softly on the greenery. Past woods and bogs and deer and frogs, he whistled through the scenery. From there Dan shot above the hot, cracked sidewalks of the city. It looked so grim and gray to him, yet strangely rather pretty. The wind died down just outside town. Dan crashed and burned and flipped. He bonked his nose and tore his clothes, then off to school he skipped. And as he trotted into class, his teacher dropped her chalk and asked, "Where in the world have you been, young man?" "I don't know," said Dangerous Dan. Dangerous Dan learned lots, then ran back home and out to play. But one wrong turn past one long fern, and Dan had lost his way. He searched around and thought he found his way back to his lawn, then saw a bird that's only heard of near the Amazon. "The Amazon!" he cried. "Hold on! We studied that in school. That's jungle land with jaguars and big snakes and spiders. Cool!" Trees like towers draped with flowers stretched up to the skies, where monkeys hung and swung among the birds and butterflies. But on the ground a problem wound itself around Dan's feet. Oh no, was he about to be an anaconda treat? But Dan had no intention, though, of being squished and eaten. That snake got whacked and kicked and smacked, and elbowed, punched, and beaten. The jungle viewed this mortal feud with fear, respect, and awe, until a wily crocodile declared the match a draw. Dan made his break from croc and snake. He ran, he flailed, and hopped, and climbed and leaped and swam and creeped and walked until he dropped. And as he lay there nearly dead, a native rescued him and said, "What happened to my hose, young man?" "I don't know," said Dangerous Dan. Dangerous Dan had dinner and was washing dishes when he reached too far for a jelly jar and lost his balance. Then he belly flopped and splashed and dropped into a deep blue world, with dinnerware piled everywhere as bubbles popped and swirled. With a kick and a splash, he swam off in a flash to look closer at what he had found. He made several passes through spoons, plates, and glasses, exploring and goofing around. He had great gobs of fun, but he still wasn't done with his job, so he thought of a plan. "I can wash every dish and still swim like a fish," said the quick-thinking Dangerous Dan. With his shirt as a mop, he swam up to the top of a plate, then he swooshed down the rim. Then he did it again, till the proud moment when it looked shiny and spotless to him. He had to do the glasses, too, which made the world look weird. The pan and pot were gross, but not as bad as he had feared. Some things weren't quite the lovely sight they might have been or could have, like bits of meat he didn't eat, and vegetables he should have. But Dan was tough, and soon enough he finished all of it, then dove once more to the ocean floor and pulled the plug and quit. And as he stood there smiling proudly, Mom came in complaining loudly. "What's this big wet mess, young man?" "I don't know," said Dangerous Dan. Dangerous Dan, adventure man, reviewed his busy day. His folks did too, and as folks do, reacted with dismay. To bed, they said, and off he sped. His day was done. A pity. He changed and brushed and washed and flushed and went to bed. Or did he?